welcome tonight. I'm so glad you all were able to make it. Unfortunately and disappointing, Bill Raggio became sick today and is not going to be with us tonight. But we have his guarantee that he will come again at a future time. So we will work on that. Let's please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's move. All right. So I'm not as nervous about a jam-packed meeting as I thought we would have, but still let's move on and keep it going efficiently. So our next meetings are Tuesday, note we have changed the dates of some of the meetings. So our next meeting is Tuesday, April 28th. We're having Mort Klein, the head of the Zionist Organization of America. Tuesday, May 12th, we're having Thomas Kenneth, who, as you know, was the attorney for Penny, and he ran for Manhattan DA before, and now, and he's, besides being a very now prominent attorney, he has written a murder mystery thriller book, and that should be a real treat for us, and we look forward to having him bring his book the next time. He's spoken to us before too, as you may remember. And then Tuesday, June 2nd, we're having Paul Teller, who was a long time worked in Congress and was Vice President Pence's chief of staff, or worked with Vice President Pence, and then after the administration ended, he worked for Pence in an organization that they established. Okay, membership, it's very, very important. We are in a serious situation. We have funds in the bank to continue for maybe 2 years, and we really need everybody to check if they are paid up and or join or renew, and please check and make sure that you're up to date on your membership. It's only $25. Where could you can't even go to the movies, you can't even buy a shirt, so we would really, really appreciate that, so that we continue the programs. And as I always tell you, we are all volunteers, and we have wonderful guest speakers who also come to us and are not paid. We also need volunteers. If any of you can help with the website, with the flyers, emails, sending out emails for us, phone calls, and more, please let them know at the sign-in table. Now, this is the petitioning period. You know, in order to get our candidates on the ballot, we are a political club, and this is what it's all about. In order to get our candidates on the ballot, we have to get signatures of registered Republicans. You'll probably see people out on the street already. The Democrats were out there the very first day, and Republicans have a harder time because it's difficult to go out in the street and find registered Republicans. But so please, I would appreciate it if you would, before you leave tonight, please come up to me and sign my petition, especially if you live in the 67th AD. If you live in another AD, there are people here carrying petitions for people in other ADs. So you can sign those. But I'd really, really appreciate your signatures. As a party person, I need to get signatures, so I'd really appreciate yours.
What is that location? You said 67 AD means nothing to me.
It's the west side. It's the west side here,
The west side is,
where we are
it's
located.
cut, it's cut.
Like up to 90 something, up to 93rd Street, down to, I think, maybe in the 60s or maybe even 59.
So it's not my street. Okay, we're Chelsea. Okay. We're downtown.
Chelsea's, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but listen, there's nothing, that, you can sign this petition also if you're in a different AD. That would be, that's fine, because, I have the, Carolyn Schinkel, who's running for Congress, is on this petition, so your signature would count for her.
Even if you live in the Bronx?
No. The Bronx is out, sorry. But 74, 75, 76, the east side, ADs. Okay, and, on this line, we have a candidate with us tonight. You remember last time you heard from Carolyn Schinkel, and tonight we are going to hear from Charlotte Friedman for 3 minutes. She's running for state senate, that's in the 47th senatorial district. And if you look at the agenda, there's a lot of good information on the agenda. We have listed the candidates and contact information for them. They all could use your help of volunteering. So I hope you'll use this information, connect with one of them, especially Carolyn Schinkel for Congress, who's running for Jerry Nadler's seat, the one that he's vacating, and it's really important. And as you saw last time, she really is a very serious, credentialed candidate. Okay, all right. So let me just run through the agenda, and then I'll have Charlotte come up. So then we will have, after this, we will have our speaker. And you can, it will be just the usual presentation and Q&A. Please remember, one question for the Q&A, 30 seconds. Formulate your question in your head before you raise your hand, or while you're raising your hand. But before you speak, please have the question in mind. You don't have to thank the speaker. We've already done that for you. So that way we can take as many questions as possible. And then we have a special treat also. We have books available for, not for sale, they're being given away. If you remember, Bruce Bechtol and Anthony Celso really want to get the word out. So they are giving their books away, but we have very limited quantities. So if you'd like a book and you didn't already get one last time when Bruce was here, you're invited to please, after the meeting, we'll have the book signing. And then after the meeting, and please cooperate with us in vacating the room by 9 o'clock. Because we will be charged for the custodians who put in overtime. So I really ask your cooperation. You know, lately I've been going around and saying, please leave the room, please leave the room, please don't make me do that. So, but for those of you who want to continue conversing and socializing, everyone, a whole group goes over to Fred's at 476 Amsterdam Avenue, Amsterdam at 83rd Street. It's a really pleasant place. They're very nice to everybody. You do not have to order food or drink to sit there and be with everyone. Okay, so right now, Charlotte, please come up and talk to everybody.
Watch the wire, Sean.
One other thing, please put your cell phones off or on vibrate, please.
Watch the wire, Sean. I gotta do something with it.
Good evening, everybody. It's finally spring.
Yeah,
It's a nice time to be in a room full of Republicans. Everybody's here. So My name is Charlotte Friedman. I'm running to win the senatorial seat, and I'm here to win your vote. Thank you all who voted for me in February. It was a 3-week run, and it did pretty well. I hope to do better this time.
They're all looking.
Stay with the mic. Okay. I'm a Republican who's been asking since 2014, where is America? I've been watching things spiral, but not upwards. And it's time, because what is happening to our great city is not acceptable. I pledge to work diligently to keep our communities safe, and opportunities must be available to all citizens. You cannot stop people from going to their worship places because they don't worship the way you do. You cannot stop people from working because you want to have a celebration of whatever you want to celebrate throughout the streets. You have to be civilized in the United States. So, as a Jewish woman, I know firsthand what anti-Semitism is. I'm a second-generation Holocaust survivor. I have watched as our city that I love has grown blind to hatred. We must fight to keep our freedoms. Freedoms are not cheap and are not free. And we actually must do something, all of us. Whether you're voting, whether you're signing a piece of paper, whether you're supporting someone, all of us must do something. And public safety would be primary on my list because it affects all of the religions, all of the people at all ages. The police is not our enemy. Removing 5,000 of the blue is not a good idea. I promise that I will keep whatever amount we need to cover this city at all times, whether it's 5,000 or 20,000, whatever that number is. One thing I know for sure, if we look at the real estate market, it is always showing you how we're doing. It always tells you how we are doing. It is a great indicator, and if we look at it today, it's not so great. As a businesswoman, I know what it takes to run a successful business. I am not coming from the political arena. I have been in the business arena all of my life, and I've always graduated from rookie to either writing a column, teaching it, or supporting whoever it needs to be supported to get it to the next step. So yes, I can take this to the next step, and I promise you I will.
That's Charlotte for State Senate.
State Senate, yes.
Okay, all right. So, welcome to an exceptional evening at the West Side Republican Club. We are blessed and privileged to have with us an up-to-the-minute expert on Iran, Anthony Celso, professor of political science at Angela State University. Once again, we scheduled speakers in advance on a topic that became exquisitely timely by the time of our meeting. This was the case with Bill Raggio many times, and unfortunately he's not here to reap the praise and understand the coincidence. But Anthony Celso is a new discovery made through one of our club's biggest champions, Bruce Bechtol, who, by the way, sends his good wishes for a successful meeting, with whom Dr. Celso authored the recently published Rogue Allies, the strategic partnership between Iran and North Korea. Who better to enlighten us on Iran today than the one who informed the Iran portion of that brilliant book? Even more currently, Dr. Celso, who received a PhD in comparative public policy from Ohio State University, is researching the ongoing war between Israel and Iran's axis of resistance. With an article on Trump's 20-point plan and Hamas's rebirth, in the winter 2026 edition of the Middle East Quarterly. Inspiring tonight's talk is an article in progress on the influence of the 2006 Lebanon War on Israel's the influence of that war on Israel's post-October 7th way of war. More than I imagined, his appearance with Bill Raggio was a perfect top pairing. For Dr. Celso, teaching in ASU's Department of Security Studies and Criminal Justice, also is an expert on terrorism, having authored 2 books, Al-Qaeda Post-9/11 Devolution and the Islamic State, A Comparative History of Jihadist Warfare, and over 24 articles on Sunni jihadist groups and terrorism. We are grateful to Anthony, who came from Pennsylvania. In Anthony's case, we are also grateful to Angelo State University. I never expected Dr. Celso to accept our invitation because I thought he was based in Texas. But thankfully, ASU allows online teaching, which lets Dr. Celso live on the East Coast. While coming from Pennsylvania also is a trip, at least it's not cross-country. So without further ado, let's greet Dr. Anthony Celso.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, very good. I want to thank Marcia for that most generous of introductions. And I know that you know my colleague, Bruce Bechtol. We co-authored the book Rogue Allies, the strategic partnership between Iran and North Korea. And it was a rare collaborative, comparative endeavor. If you take a look at Iran's missile arsenal that is prominently featured in its retaliatory capability in the ongoing war, a lot of it is based upon North Korean designs. If you take a look at their underground fortification systems, their tunneling network, and this is the same case with Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's courtesy of North Korea, financed by Iran. Now, if you don't know Bill Raggio, he is a legend in the counterterrorism field. And if you have not read the Long War Journal, and if you've not read any of the analysis of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, you have done yourself a great disservice. This book borrows heavily from a lot of the FDD Long War Journal research that Bill pioneered. All right. Now, as Marcia indicated, I'm going to deal with what is arguably Israel's worst war. That is the 2006 war against Hezbollah. It was the embarrassing spectacle of the once seemingly invincible Israeli Defense Forces humiliated by what was, and I think mistakenly, considered to be a ragtag guerrilla organization. And in part because of the difficulties that Israel had in suppressing Hezbollah in that summer of 2006. The IDF that was faced with an embarrassing spectacle of defeat. And remember, the late Hassan Nasrallah proclaimed divine victory after the 2006 war. Well, today we've had a series of wars where Iran's supposedly invincible axis of resistance is slowly unraveling, in large measure because of Israeli military innovations that were made as a consequence of very painful lessons learned in the 2006 war. Now today, as the war continues, and when it will end is anyone's guess. What is clear is there are a lot of discordant voices out there, typically ensconced in the Democratic Party, that will say, well, it's another forever war. It is another quagmire. Conventional states cannot defeat guerrilla organizations. They have an insurmountable asymmetric advantage. And when Israel was readying its military retaliation after October 7th, when 1,200 of its citizens were slaughtered in the most barbaric way, there are a lot of voices out there that says that Israel was falling into an Iranian trap, that it was doomed to quagmire, it was doomed to forever war, that the architect of October 7th, Yahya Sinwar, was a strategic genius. Now, this kind of thinking is, I think, represented in a lot of academic journals, and most particularly in Foreign Affairs magazine. I'm sure some of you have read Foreign Affairs magazine. And after October 7th, there are a lot of brave predictions of the coming Israeli defeat, the coming quagmire, the coming forever war, how Hamas, Iran, and its vaunted axis of resistance will be emboldened. So if you just take a look at after October 7th, just some of the titles of the articles written in Foreign Affairs magazine gives you a sense of this. Audrey Cronin, shortly after October 7th, wrote Hamas's asymmetrical advantage. In December of 2023, Robert Pape predicted bravely Israel's defeat in an article entitled Israel's Failed Bombing Campaign in Gaza. He followed up the following year with the article Hamas is Winning, Why Israel's Failing Strategy Makes Its Enemies Stronger. In January of 2024, Vali Nasser, we see him a lot on CNN, wrote How the War in Gaza Revived Iran's Axis of Resistance. Renad Mansour, in November of 2024, wrote Axis of Resilience. Israel is underestimating Iran and its allies. Not only Foreign Affairs, but the New York Times, if you read the editorials of the New York Times, most particularly Thomas Friedman. I'm sure he's one of your favorites.
Yeah,
you know?
very credible.
Honestly, when I read Thomas Friedman's editorials about Israel and the Middle East, it is like going to a lunatic asylum and some patient out there talking endlessly about a malevolent spirit by the name of Netanyahu. And so he writes, as he often does, with Olympian certitude, in December 2024 editorial in the Times, and it's emblematic of the conventional analysis that's misrooted in believing that the war on terror is failed. He writes, again with Olympian certitude, that is only matched by how frequently wrong he is. He writes, I've argued from day one that it was a trap. A trap, I am sorry to say, the Biden administration was not firm enough in stopping Israel from falling into, and not firm enough on insisting on a better road, a road not taken. This is a time for not pulling punches. The Jewish state of Israel is in grave, grave danger today. And this danger comes from Iran and the current Israeli ruling coalition, right? Now, all these fatalistic assessments, these dire prophecies of doom and gloom, forever war, military quagmire, and the inevitable defeat of insurmountable Islamist insurgents, none of it has come to pass. If you take a look at the wars after October 7th that have been engineered by Israel principally, but now joined by the United States, whether it is in the June 2025 12 Days War to shatter Iran's nuclear program, or the ongoing operations, Operation Epic Fury. You gotta love these names, Epic Fury, Roaring Lion, Rising Lion. I mean, mean, these things are just priceless. If you take a look at the damage that the Israelis have able to inflict on the so-called axis of resistance, take a look at Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. 30,000 dead, 90% of Hamas's rocket arsenal destroyed. Do you remember the strategic genius, Yahya Sinwar, that goaded Israel into an overreaction? That strategic genius is dead. So is Mohammed Sinwar. So is Ismail Haniyeh. Take a look at the September-October 2024 war in Lebanon against Hezbollah. 5,000 Hezbollah dead and counting. More than half of its missile and rocket arsenal destroyed. In fact, I just read recently about 70% of its missile capacity has been degraded. Hassan Nasrallah, the chairman of Hezbollah, who in 2006, and I think rightfully so, the victory wasn't divine, but it was in fact a victory. There would be no divine victory in September 2024. Hassan Nasrallah and much of the Islamic Jihad Council, that was the epicenter of Hezbollah's inner command, have been destroyed. Ongoing, really starting in the June 2025 military campaign, which the United States joined, in Operation Midnight Hammer, much of Iran's military industrial infrastructure has been shattered. Its top leaders, including Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, is dead. 50 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders are dead. Its missile and nuclear industries have been degraded. And increasingly, perhaps to encourage an internal rebellion within Iran, the apparatus of internal repression, the besieged and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they are being hammered by American and Israeli military strikes. Iran and the axis of resistance, the impregnable axis of resistance, has been, in my view, mortally wounded. Doesn't mean it's going to collapse overnight, but it is likely to end. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but inevitably, and I'll talk about why, its days are numbered. All right? Now, Israeli military success, which went against that conventional wisdom of forever war and quagmire, that was really reinforced by the Israeli military performance in the 2006 war. I think we need to review that 2006 war because it becomes the impetus for broad-based institutional reform, both in terms of how to define the enemy, how do you defeat that enemy, and how do you structure your military forces. So if you remember that month-long war in the summer of 2006, it was actually sparked by a Hezbollah raid. Hezbollah raided a Israeli military outpost. They killed 3 IDF servicemen, and they took two servicemen hostage. Now, historically, the Israelis will release thousands of jihadi terrorists for even the one dead body of an Israeli citizen or an Israeli soldier. I mean, and so Hezbollah never imagined that they would be involved in a full front war with Israel. They just assumed that the Israelis would just launch a few retaliatory strikes, and they were caught off guard. But the Israelis themselves had poorly planned that war. And I remember that war, and there are 3 images of that war that I'd like to convey. One is that if you remember, Hezbollah rocket volleys and firepower was continuous, day in, day out. The Israelis could not suppress that rocket fire. Now, militarily, that rocket fire, it didn't matter. It was militarily insignificant. But the psychological aspect of it was very debilitating. It was devastating. The second sort of image, and I think you all remember, and this was really publicized heavily by Hezbollah's Al-Manar television network, was this image of an Israeli military naval frigate in the Mediterranean burning. Do you remember that? Remember that image of a naval ship burning? It was taken out by a Hezbollah precision-guided missile that was provided to it from Iran, when they have really tens of thousands of Iranian-provided missiles that are based upon North Korean technological designs. And so you got this image of continuous rocket fire. The Israelis can't do anything about it. They've got this image of a naval frigate being taken out by a Hezbollah precision-guided missile. And the final image that I want to leave you with in terms of the imaging, and really images matter a great deal in an age of social media. The final image, have you ever been to northern Israel? Along the Lebanese border, it is very mountainous terrain. There are long winding roads. Well, the Israelis launched a haphazard land incursion into Lebanon the final 2 days of the war. I mean, they pretty much just bombed for 30 days. In the last 2 days, they had a haphazard military campaign. And so what you had is these long lines of IDF tanks that were caught in a traffic jam being hammered by Hezbollah anti-tank missiles and RPG fires. This was hugely embarrassing to the Israeli Defense Forces. You know, when you think of Israel, you normally think of the Israeli army as kind of being invincible. You think of the 67 war, right? The 6-day war, where tiny Israel, and I remember as a child, I was just really awestruck that Israel could destroy the Egyptian, the Syrian, the Jordanian army, and some other Arab armies that had joined it. It was just a remarkable achievement, particularly within the shadow of the Holocaust. And then this created, you know, a kind of, what the hell happened? What the hell happened to the Israeli military? And so there was a lot of soul searching within Israel about why the hell this happened. And there was the Vinograd Commission, which was kind of like our 9/11 commission. When something bad happens, you go around and you have a government commission and you make recommendations. And what they found out is that Israel underestimated Hezbollah. Hezbollah was not a ragtag guerrilla movement. It was not an insurgent network. It was, in fact, a rocket-based, missile-based terror army. It had substantial conventional capability. Okay? It had tens of thousands of soldiers organized in divisions and brigades. It had tens of thousands of precision-guided missiles. It had tens of thousands of rockets. It was armed to the teeth by Iran with sophisticated underground tunneling systems provided by North Korea. Right? So it was not a shadowy guerrilla force. And the Israelis then had to systematically redefine who the hell they were fighting. And the conventional view that Hezbollah was just this nationalist guerrilla organization, it was not. It was a rocket-based terror army financed by Iran with assistance of North Korea, Russia, and China. And the Israelis also understood that you can't win a military campaign simply using air power. We hear this a lot today. You know, you simply, you just cannot subdue a regime and induce regime change and collapse on the basis of air power. Now, there is one exception to this, by the way. If you think of Slobodan Milosevic, the air campaign unchained by NATO in Bosnia and Kosovo ultimately led to the unraveling of Milosevic's Serbian state. So, you know, this thing that somehow you can't win it from the air, but generally it's true. It's generally true. All right, so the Israelis learned some rather painful lessons. And from 2006 all the way to 2020, the Israeli Defense Forces changed their operational strategy, all right? Instead of fighting decentralized terror networks, you're fighting a terror army with conventional weaponry. We saw this when Hezbollah moved into Syria to save, at least for a temporary period, the Assad regime. Hezbollah had 6,000 soldiers in Lebanon. It fought a conventional war. It had conventional capability. There are 3,000 miles of North Korean provided tunnels in Lebanon, whether it's South Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley, or South Beirut. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in fact, missiles and rockets that are provided to Hezbollah from Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China. And so you've got a rocket and missile-based terror army that is armed by third parties, all part of Iran's Ring of Fire. You're probably familiar with the Ring of Fire strategy, where the Iranians have equipped their proxies, whether it be Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank, Hezbollah in South Lebanon, the Syrian regime under Bashar al-Assad, and of course the Yemeni Houthis, and the Iraqi paramilitaries that are tied to the Shia population, whose fidelity is to the supreme leader of Iran. You know, there's an idea that Hezbollah was a nationalist movement. No, I mean, the Lebanese know that. Hezbollah is extremely unpopular in Lebanon. And increasingly, you're going to see the Lebanese military move against them. All right, so you redefine the enemy as a rocket missile-based terror army financed, armed by the Iranians in a ring of fire strategy that aimed ultimately to overwhelm Israel, whether it's the occupied territories from Lebanon, from Syria, from Yemen, from Iraq, all orchestrated by Iran, right? All right, so you redefine the enemy. And then you change your operational doctrine. Instead of just relying exclusively on, airstrikes or special forces operations, you're going to have a strategy that marries asymmetric and conventional war, that marries military and intelligence capability. All right. One way of really looking at this Israeli way of war that really was uncorked after October 7th, because October 7th indicates this is an existential struggle. Either we kill them or they're going to kill us. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's just the truth. All right? So an existential struggle orchestrated by Iran in a ring of fire strategy that requires a redefinition of the enemy and a reorganization of your operational doctrine, okay? If you take a look at the 2024 war that Israel mounted against Hezbollah, it is the direct inverse of what happened in 2006. You know, I was on a cruise in the Middle East, interestingly enough, when we all heard, and this was just simply remarkable, how the hell could anybody ever do this? The pager and walkie-talkie attacks. Do you remember all that?
Amazing.
That was just absolutely amazing that the Mossad could pull that off. Now, what happened was that this was part of an orchestrated strategy, which was to simply use asymmetric efforts, penetrate the purchasing system of your adversary. You're creating a front company selling electrically charged pagers and walkie-talkies that are timed to go off at the most propitious moment. So in September of 2024, you had literally thousands of Hezbollah leaders, and just think, it's very unnerving. You have your cell phone here, and this thing blows. Everybody's gonna be looking at their cell phone. I mean, gee, and so, psychologically, that's devastating, taking out the communication system of your adversary. Once they took out the communication system, because that's what Hezbollah relied on. They figured, well, we're not gonna rely on cell phones because the Israelis got good intelligence on those. So we'll have a low-rent stuff, pagers and walkie-talkies. Well, they got a rude awakening, to say the least. Once you disable the communication system of your adversary, you then engage in leadership decapitation. There's one thing about the axis of resistance, these guys are not that smart. They're not that smart. They actually have their leaders congregating in mosques. And they are easy pickings. And so that's what happened to the Islamic Jihad Council. That was the military arm of Hezbollah. They were taken out, including Hassan Nasrallah. There would be no divine victory in 2024. Israel's incorporation of asymmetric techniques was also seen in the 12 Days War. Now, if you remember, the 12 Days War began with the Israeli intelligence having drone attacks inside of Iran, where they targeted the top scientists associated with the nuclear program, and they targeted the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Okay? And so leadership decapitation then becomes the opening salvo in a conventional war to shatter the military infrastructure of your adversary. That means taking out the missile launchers. That means taking out the arsenal of rockets. That means taking out their missiles. That means shattering their production facilities. And that's exactly what's going on. What you have, if you remember, this current war started with a leadership decapitation strike. Ali Khamenei and the leading sectors within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, stupidly in daylight, met in an above-ground facility. It wasn't like the Islamic Jihad and Hassan Nasrallah. They met in an underground bunker that was really penetrated by bunker buster bombs. And so leadership decapitation then becomes an opening salvo for a multi-domain war that uses all full spectrum of Israeli conventional and asymmetric tactics, all right? So if you take a look at the Israeli way of war that was unleashed as a consequence of the reforms in the failings of the 2006 war, it means the value of preemption. Strike your opponent before they strike you. I mean, I think the lessons of October 7th made that fairly palatable. That means decapitating your enemy. That means blinding and making your enemy deaf. Once you have taken out their key leaders and you've taken down their communication systems, you then attack their weapons arsenals and you shatter their military industrial structure. This is what happened in September of 2024. This is what happened in June of 2025 against Iran. And this is what's happening that is joined with the United States in this, I guess, the 11th day of war. All right. Now, if the 2006 war had certain images, this continuous rocket fire, stranded tanks, anti-tank missiles taking out these IDF armored vehicles, the naval frigate in the Mediterranean. The 2024 and 2026 wars also have indelible images. It is a war of devastating conventional power. One takes a look at the Gaza Strip, 90% of its housing stock is destroyed. It is a way of war of stealth, cunning, and intelligence. The pager and walkie-talkie attacks. It is a war of sophisticated precision weapons that target scientific and nuclear personnel. It is a war that involves drones. Every Israeli combat unit has drones. And these drones are, the information that they retrieve is plugged into a centralized communication system, information retrieval system that uses artificial intelligence for the targeting, all right? So it's a war of great technological sophistication. And it's a war that involves shattering the myth of invincibility of your opponents. And here, and I'm just going to conclude with the death of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. Now, if you're familiar with the setup of Iran's government, Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic, is not just Iran's leader. He is the leader of all Shia. I mean, that's why Hezbollah, that's why the Houthis in Yemen, that's why the Syrian regime under Bashar al-Assad, that now has been overthrown, gave their fidelity to Iran. It was out of this kind of pan-Shiism. And under the Iranian constitution, the supreme leader is seen as the guardian of the revolution, but most particularly, he is the earthly representative of the 12th Imam. Now, if you take a look at the Shia religion, it is based on 12 Imams. The last Imam was a revered religious cleric that lived during the Middle Ages. Now, according to Islamic eschatology, forecasting the end of the world and the apocalypse, the 12th Imam was put in a state of occultation. Okay, he was in a suspended state of animation, and will only be released during the final days of mankind, where you're going to have Armageddon and the spread of Islam across the globe. So Ali Khamenei was seen as the earthly representative, the guardian of the 12th Imam. And that means that he's the functional equivalent of a divine-like figure, all right? And in this case, the killing of this divine-like figure is reminiscent of The God That Failed. I mean, there was a classic book called The God That Failed that was written as a consequence of the Stalinist period by ex-communists. And the idea of a God failing is a psychologically devastating concept. When Ali Khamenei was killed, in Iranian social media circles, there were sporadic celebrations. People were coming out to celebrate. That indicates to me that the God is dead. No one, and let's face it, the Islamic Republic killed up to 30,000 Iranian protesters last January. If people are willing to come out and celebrate the death of the supposed God, that tells me the days of the Islamic Republic are coming to an end. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but its days are numbered. When the God fails, that means pretty much the system has failed, right? And I think of a book, very famous book, some of you may have read it, called The Hitler Myth. It was written by Ian Kershaw, and it talked about the death spiral of leadership cults. And so, Hitler had created an image of himself as being this immortal, invincible, divine-like bearer of the Third Reich. Well, come 1945, when Germany's cities are being hollowed out, we can think of Dresden, for example, that means pretty much that the days are numbered. And that is really the future of Iran. And I think of Ian Kershaw's book, The Hitler Myth, and the death of leadership cults. I think of the death of Ali Khamenei, and irrespective of whom, now supposedly his son, succeeds him, the God is dead. He's not coming back. There ain't going to be no resurrection. Thank you very much. So, I'll take whatever questions you have.
Okay, I think that was absolutely brilliant, and we thank Dr. Celso for coming from Pennsylvania, and we are most honored that you came here tonight, and we hope that we can
Okay,
do it
sure.
again in the future.
Happy to do it, I love to come to New York.
So,
At least I used to love to come to New York, now I'm not so sure.
Okay, I will get to your questions, but first I wanna call on the person who says I never call on him. Is he here tonight?
Yes.
No, this is the person. All right, no, yes, yeah, no, the behind scenes, I think it was, well, I'm sorry, 1 second. Sir, did you wanna ask a question tonight? No, this person in the plaid shirt? I guess not. All right, Susan, go ahead.
Hold the button down.
Yeah. I'll repeat the question.
Thank you very much. I certainly learned a lot from your presentation. I am strongly supportive of Trump and whatever he has done to help the Israelis and America in decapitating the Iranian political parties. But I have an important question.
Sure.
I look at pictures, I think they were in the New York Times or the New York Post, or maybe even the Wall Street Journal, of crowds of Iranians in support of Khomeini's son. I just don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Sure. In a totalitarian society, you can orchestrate mass support. Now, look, one should not overestimate the strength of opposition to the Islamic Republic. There is a hardcore segment of the Iranian population. How big it is, I've seen estimates like a third, as low as 20%. It is a minority, all right? But it is still a substantial minority. Now, to understand why is because the Islamic Republic is a patronage system. A lot of people depend on the Islamic Republic for jobs and government contracts. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps controls 20% of the Iranian economy. And so there are patronage and employment schemes, and let's face it, if people don't show up at these rallies, there very well might be repercussions. So when you have to kill up to 30,000 people last January, that suggests that this is a very polarized society. And that's why I'm saying that if people, even after 30,000 protesters were murdered by the Basij, which is their internal security, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, if even in the wake of mass repression, people will come out and celebrate the demise of the regime. And what I think embodies the demise of the regime is Ali Khamenei's death. He had been a permanent fixture of Iranian society since 1989, when he ascended as a supreme leader. And as I said, the supreme leader is looked upon as a kind of quasi-divine figure. In this case, that divine figure failed.
Yes, I go.
Yeah. A lot of people think that if the theocracy were to disappear, sorry, the IRGC, as you mentioned, would take power and have some sort of military dictatorship, somewhat along the lines of Egypt. Because the opposition, they're much more organized and they're much more cohesive than they maybe not be the majority, but they know how to manipulate the levers of power. Could you speak to that?
Yes, the question, if you didn't hear it, is that if the successor to Ali Khamenei, Murtaza Khamenei, is killed, then that unravels the clerical system that then by default lends itself to a military dictatorship led by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Certainly, I think that there is a great deal of speculation that Khamenei's son is nothing more than a front for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And I think that probably is a correct analysis. But you must understand, you know, people say, why are we at war with Iran? Well, just take a look at the revolutionary motto of the Islamic Republic, okay? Allah is the greatest, death to the United States, death to Israel, curse Jews, not Zionists, curse the Jews, and victory to Islam. Now, what is so difficult to understand about that? And the Islamic Republic has engineered a series of attacks for 47 years, whether it's the Marine barracks attacks in the 1980s, whether it's killing 600 American servicemen in Iraq, whether it is orchestrating worldwide terror, including places like Bulgaria and Argentina in the 1990s. What's so difficult to understand? That you have a revolutionary regime that is implacably hostile toward the United States and seeks the destruction of the state of Israel. Again, and you would never know it. Okay, we have other questions. Again,
Yes, back here. Back there.
Professor, you seem to be painting a picture that despite our best efforts and Israel's best efforts, the patronage system and the IRGC are so well entrenched that it may just resurrect itself unless there is some further catalysts. What do you propose that might be? Kurdish arms imported, Mossad's on the ground, and
yeah.
what will work to make that regime go away?
Well, I mean, it seems to be. Now, at the end of the day, I can't imagine that the Trump administration is going to persist in this military campaign. The fear of the economic ramifications, not fear of Iranian military retaliation. But I think that the military campaign might last a few more weeks. And then there'll probably be a ceasefire worked out that will be tenuous. Now, to your question about the patronage system. Well, if you take a look at the dire economic situation in Iran, there isn't going to be any money to go around. Or water, given the systematic water shortages, given the collapse of industrial production and energy production. That entire system of graft and corruption is pretty much depleted. It is unlikely that it will be resuscitated. Now, I mean, needless to say, I don't think that the regime is going to collapse immediately. I'm glad you mentioned the Kurds. All right, the question, there's been a lot of discussions. Now, look, honestly, I'm so sick of listening to Trump and all of the systematic analysis of Trump's every utterance. Every word is parsed, every word is given all kinds of different interpretations. It doesn't matter, okay? You know, if whatever Trump says is innately contradictory, it doesn't matter. He may really try to be confusing everyone in a policy of intentional strategic ambiguity, all right? That said, and I'm going to defend Trump here, the only American president who have confounded Iran is Trump.
That's right.
That's it. He scares the shit out of them. He does. And even back in 2020, when he killed Qasem Soleimani, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. They're just used to the United States not militarily retaliating and a doctrine of strategic patience. So now you mentioned the Kurds, all right? There's a lot of discussions about U.S. support for the Iranian Kurds. And I would say that, I mean, this is very, very controversial. The United States has a very good record of working with the Kurds throughout the Middle East, whether it was in Iraq or in Syria. Unfortunately, the United States has not been very good to the Kurds long term. You know, we betrayed them after the first Gulf War. Our disengagement from Syria has led our Kurdish allies, who were so vital in the defeat of the Islamic State, they have led them to the mercy of a former al-Qaeda jihadist who was engaged in the biggest campaign of bullshit I've ever seen in my life. The idea that somehow Ahmad al-Shara will be a figure of national reconciliation, leading to a prosperous, free, democratic Syria is just abject nonsense. Again,
Microphone,
we got the microphone.
press the button.
He's got it, you're good.
You refer to, you made reference to the Shia looking upon Khamenei as a godlike figure. Well, God is dead. They're gone. Now, you didn't say anything about Khomeini. Was he looked upon as a godlike figure? And the son of Khamenei, is there going to be 3 gods who are going to be dead? I don't understand
Okay,
how
yeah.
that works.
Okay, I guess you're not alone. Look, based on the Iranian constitution, the linchpin of the system is the clerical bodies, the assembly of experts who select the supreme leader, okay? The supreme leader is supposedly a revered cleric that can trace his lineage back to past imams that had represented the Shia community. The last imam, the 12th imam, was a revered religious cleric who, according to Islamic eschatology, which deals with the end of the world, was put in a state of animation, all right? He's in some cave in a period of occultation that, based on the apocalyptic literature, will be released. All right, the problem then becomes, who is going to represent the Shia during this transitional period before the release from occultation? And here, the Shia revolutionary regime sees the supreme leader as the earthly custodian of the 12th Imam. He rules as a trustee before Allah releases the 12th Imam from a state of suspension. That means he's a god. He's a god. So, I mean, the distinction here between Khamenei, who was killed in a U.S., well, actually, an Israeli military operation, and his predecessor, Ayatollah Khomeini, he died of natural causes. That's an important distinction. Allah deemed that his days were limited. Well, Allah didn't have anything to do with Ali Khamenei's death. I mean, that was due to an IDF bombing raid. Okay? So, if you're a god and you die, you got some explaining to do. You got a lot of explaining to do. All right?
Jim.
Professor Celso, thanks for coming. You touched on the Peshmerga and what influence they might have. We're coming up for midterms. I can see Trump strategically pulling back from any further engagement. Once those elections are over, win, lose, or draw, do you see engagement by the Peshmerga on a military basis in Iran to dethrone the current regime? And a follow-up is, Iran exports 80 to 90% of its crude to China. That's about 1.38, 1.4 barrels per day. That's about 15% that China imports on a given basis. If you shut that oil down, you've got a problem with a peer adversary. Will Trump go that far in terms of pushing the Iranians over the cliff? Thank you.
Well, there are a lot of nightmarish scenarios that are very fanciful, and you just can't take current crises and then extrapolate it indefinitely into the future. All right. I doubt very seriously if the Trump administration is going to press the military campaign beyond a month. Principally because of what you just said, the fear of the economic ramifications. What this means is that you are weakening a regime that is committed to your destruction. You are weakening militarily. I would prefer a weak adversary after the war to a strong adversary that you never warred against, but is war with you. So strategically, it makes sense for him, after about a month, to call it off, and then let's try to make a deal, you know. Trump fancies himself a kind of deal maker, the art of the deal, right? And so he'll try, but you know, pretty much, the regime and its ideological DNA is fairly impervious. So I suspect that given the mass repression, given the weakness, given the abject incompetence in terms of the military, I do not see this regime surviving more than a few years. It might limp along, but down the road, I think internally, there will be schisms within the regime that will want some kind of rapprochement with the West. That's what it seems to me. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. But I'm not gonna pull a Thomas Friedman and present myself as a Nostradamus. I'm not seeing, as it stands right now, I never really thought regime change was likely. What you're likely to have is a reconstitution of the existing regime to the point where there may very well be some sort of future dialogue after the Iranians have no choice. But that does not mean that the regime survives forever.
The man in the black shirt there? Yes, you're the one who complained that I didn't call, right?
Microphone.
Yes, thank you. Very good talking.
Push the button.
It's on. Two questions. In October of 1983, the Marine barrack was killed, 241 Americans were killed. In July of 1994, they blew the Jewish Institute in Buenos Aires, the Armenian Institute.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Well, the people who committed these acts, were they eventually taken out, or were they still around? Because I believe we took out one of them, the one who killed the Marines. Can you address that, at least people who committed these different acts, were they ever taken out or what?
I do believe the people responsible for the 1983 Marine barracks bombings. And you remember there were bombings of the U.S. Embassy prior to that. And not only did American Marines die in 1983, but also French paratroopers.
Yes.
You know, and the U.S. And the French were there, if you remember, back in '83, because Israel had invaded Lebanon to destroy the Palestine Liberation Organization's military infrastructure. And they were there to assist the PLO's evacuation. And so, to my knowledge, those who were responsible for the bombings, most particularly Ahmad Munjaniya, he was killed, I think, in 2007 by the Israelis. So the answer is yes, regarding the 1983 barracks bombing. Regarding the 1994, and really there was a series of attacks, Hezbollah and Iranian attacks in Argentina, which has a very large Jewish diaspora population. In 1992, there was an attack on the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. And 2 years later, you had the Israeli Argentine Community Organization that was bombed by Hezbollah. Those people have never been brought to justice. My understanding, they're still out there. Now, they may have died in the recent spate of bombings, but to my knowledge, those people are still out there. And they've never been prosecuted by Argentine justice, principally because they're shielded by Iran. And now you do have an Argentine
Prime Minister
leader, Javier Milei, who is an ally of Trump, that is likely to be very, very tough regarding Hezbollah and whatever network it has in Argentina. And you know, interestingly enough, everybody's talking about what are Iran's options today. You know, in the past, they've had a very extensive external terrorist network that we've seen in terms of Argentina, in places like Bulgaria in 2013. A bus of Israeli tourists were killed. Attacks in Turkey, attacks throughout the entire world. They're external system has degraded. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't reactivate it, but it has degraded. In large measure, because I think the most notorious attacks, such as the Argentine attacks, caught people by off guard. And so the intelligence services were not as prepared then as they are now.
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Are you familiar with the National Council of Resistance in Iran? Are they at all feasible?
Right now, I mean, what's going to replace the revolutionary regime? Who knows? No one knows. Interestingly enough, in all this talk about, the support of the Kurds, I would argue that a fragmented Iran that is affected by centrifugal forces would be a net plus. Now, I can tell you a lot of people don't think that, and that this is a highly controversial argument. But, okay, a fragmented Iran would give certain historically repressed minorities, such as Sunni Arabs and the Kurds, some level of autonomy. I mean, the Kurds in Syria had enjoyed that with the weakening of the Assad regime, and only recently has had their autonomy intruded upon by the current government of al-Shara, who is an ex-Al-Qaeda jihadist that now presumably has seen the light. Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah, wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay, we got so many hands. I'm not about gratuitous favors.
Okay, are you up for more questions?
Huh?
Are you ready for more?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm ready. Whatever you.
Among the many YouTube videos I've been watching on Iran, one of the most interesting, I'd like you to verify or comment on it. It was very interesting. It said, if I remember correctly, I think it was in 1992, there was a battle between Israel and Syria. Syria sent 90 Russian MiGs. Israel sent F-15 fighters as modified by Israeli technology. Result, Israel whatever, Syria 0. Every MiG was shot down. The next day, every country in the world that had a Russian MiG stopped using the MiGs. Well, the MiGs were totally discredited by that one battle, which showed the superiority of the F-15/Israeli technology. Now, I have the video I saw said the same thing just happened now. We have totally discredited Chinese technology, North Korean technologies. Okay, the question is that true? Do all of these client states of China, North Korea, etc., now no longer believe that China is in their corner because it did nothing with Venezuela, Cuba, etc., or that their technology is of any value?
Well, I think the answer is yes to both questions. Iranian missile defenses were provided by Russia. Iranian missile defenses failed.
Yes.
Okay, they failed in large measure because of the effects of Russian technology. It's interesting. Tell you how inept Venezuela is. Venezuela had purchased very sophisticated Russian-made missile defense systems. They just never unpackaged them in the cargo. They just simply forgot about it, or whatever, I don't know. But that shows you how incompetent. But the question is, even if they had and they fully employed them, there probably wouldn't be much value. And you're right. Iran has commercial and defense treaties with Russia, with North Korea, with China. They ain't getting any help. I mean, Russia has apparently provided some targeting information, but they have done that historically. They provided targeting information to the Taliban during the period of U.S. occupation. And so, the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, they'll cooperate with the Iranians, but they're not going to save the Iranians. It's a lost cause.
Sir, this gentleman.
It's on the right.
Okay. Everything that you said, all your answers, everything was wonderful, and I agree with everything you said. But I'm more disturbed than ever, because you started talking about waiting 2 months, 3 months, and then hoping we can negotiate. Negotiate with who? They're impossible to negotiate with. But the thing that's bothered me the most is something that I don't think you left out intentionally, is that we talk about what one of our aims was. Our aim was to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. And as a result, I didn't hear this come up once in this conversation. That's the key. How can you leave 2 months from now with them still having the equipment to create a nuclear bomb and not worry about it? This thing is impossible. I don't see how we're dealing with this correctly.
Let me respond to you. The June 2025 12 days war was aimed at their nuclear installations. The United States has sophisticated bombing technologies, and Operation Midnight Hammer was integrated in the Israeli military actions that took out and severely damaged. Trump overstates things. They weren't obliterated, but they were weakened very badly. And the current war, I mean, if you really want to know about what the current war is about, it's not about Iran's nuclear capability. That was really devastating, and it was severely degraded. It wasn't completely obliterated, it wasn't destroyed. I mean, you still have the scientific know-how to reactivate it, but the facilities have been shattered. No, it's about Iran's reconstitution of its ballistic missile system. That's what this war is about. It is about degrading that missile capability that threatens Israel and threatens Arab Gulf states. It hasn't anything to do with the nuclear capabilities.
But still they have it, don't they?
But they have the nuclear infrastructure that has been shattered rather badly. But they do not have a nuclear weapon. And there's a lot of discussions, if you've been following a lot of the news, about, okay, there are going to be future Israeli and American special forces operations that take that uranium, that enriched uranium, out of Iran. I mean, I'm sorry. In the middle of a war, you're not going to have that kind of daring Entebbe-like raid. You're just not. And it's not necessary. You're not going to be able to weaponize this material, particularly within the context of an ongoing war. So yeah, I understand. Certainly, with reservations about a nuclearized Iran. And that's why there's an exception for Iran, because of the religious fervor of jihad, and particularly within the context of Shia eschatology, where you have this idea that the supreme leader is the earthly representative of the 12th Imam that will be released during shortly before the apocalypse. So the idea of an apocalyptic ideology is part of the regime's DNA. That means you cannot risk having that regime having nuclear weapons, because mutual assured destruction, when you value martyrdom, means nothing.
We have one more question and then we'll go to the book signing. Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Billy Spearman. I'm going to make this real short. I'm a member of the Women's Press Collective, and I've been with them for about 25 years now, and I would like for you all to become members. And
so we need a question relevant to our
I just want to let you know that what we're talking about here, we can get printed up. It won't cost you anything to do it. I'll print it up, and I just need some help to get the information out. Thank you.
We'll include it in our announcements next time. It's not appropriate for now, sorry. Okay, so one more since that was. Yes, right here.
This is a difficult question. I come from Israel, and ever since I'm a child, I've been in many wars, and the October 7 war was all about, it was named Al-Aqsa flood. You know, they believe that they are entitled, and right now they have the Golden Dome, they have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, all on what the Jews believe is our first temple and the second temple.
You need a question.
We want the third temple to be built there. Obviously, it's not gonna happen. In your opinion, how do you think it can ever end when the Jews and the Arabs, not the Arabs, the Muslims, want the same thing? We all want Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, the question, if you didn't hear it, deals with the religious holy sites of East Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is built on the remains of the Second Temple. In order to really understand Iran's Ring of Fire strategy, is the liberation of Al-Aqsa Mosque that is seen under foreign occupation. And it is one of those connecting threads. If you take a look at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Expeditionary Force, the Quds Force, Quds is Jerusalem in Arabic. So, and Hamas, as was indicated, their October 7th Al-Aqsa flood or storm, or however you want to describe it, that's the connecting thread, which is the liberation of Dar al-Islam, Islamic territory, from foreign occupation. This is a religious obligation in the form of jihad being compulsory for all Muslims. And so the question is, how do you overcome that? I don't think you do. I do not think you do. In the Islamic religion, you're not going to have, in my view, and I'm sure this would be pilloried as Islamophobic, that you're not going to have what you had in Christianity, the functional equivalent of a Protestant Reformation. You're just not. Why? Because the Quran is considered sacred text. It doesn't lend itself to some sort of editorial overhaul. And so it's permanent, it's fixed. I mean, that's part of the power of Islam. It is the literal word of Allah that cannot be altered, cannot be edited. You can't have with certain provisos and modifications. Either you believe it or you don't. And, you know, it is interesting. And you talked about the Third Temple of Jerusalem. And there are a lot of zealot groups in Israel that would love, and a lot of Christian Zionists in Israel as well, that would love to bomb the Al-Aqsa Mosque and make way for the Third Temple of Jerusalem. That would make for a very interesting day on CNN.
And with that, we'll take that up without the next one. If you would like a copy of Rogue Allies, please go to the table where the books are set out.
You were so right. You can't say enough for them, stuff, and then they are swinging anyway all that time. If they assume that you're going to carry it. No,